The black silence of deep space was usually calm. Stars burned in the distance and the quiet hum of engines filled the alien convoy. The convoy was made up of different species all traveling together for safety. There were research ships, transport carriers, and a few lightly armed escorts. For many weeks they had crossed empty regions of space without trouble. On the bridge of the lead vessel, a tall insectoid captain named Varken watched the navigation display. His ship, the Talaran, was old but reliable. The mission was simple: bring a group of scientists and diplomats to a neutral trade station where knowledge and culture would be shared. Nothing about the journey suggested danger, but danger has a way of arriving when least expected. Without warning, alarms echoed through the convoy. Red lights flashed. The crew scrambled to their stations. Varken's eyes widened as the sensors lit up with dozens of signals. Huge ships, sharp and menacing, appeared on all sides. "They came from warp," shouted a technician. "We are surrounded!" The display showed them clearly now, hunter ships. Their black hulls reflected little light, their weapons bristling with energy cannons. The hunters were predators of space, known across the galaxy for cruelty and conquest. They took what they wanted. No one negotiated with them. No one escaped once they were surrounded. Varken's claws trembled slightly, but he forced himself to speak calmly. "Raise shields. Form a defensive formation. Perhaps they only want supplies." But deep down, he knew better. On the other side of the convoy, a small vessel of the Kalari species panicked. The Kalari were amphibious beings, gentle and soft-spoken. Their captain, Relira, pressed her trembling hands against the controls. "We cannot fight them. Our weapons will not last a minute," she whispered to her crew. Her words were true. The convoy had no warships. At most, a few defense cannons and shield layers. Against a hunter fleet, they were as helpless as prey before a predator. The hunter's flagship transmitted a message. The voice was cold, metallic, and sharp. "Alien convoy. You are surrounded. Shut down your engines. Surrender your ships. You will be processed. Resist and you will be destroyed." A silence spread across the bridges of every alien vessel. Everyone knew what processed meant. Some would be taken as slaves. Others would be stripped of their knowledge and resources. Entire ships would vanish. The hunters left no survivors unless they had a reason. On the Talaran, Varken clenched his claws. His people had once lost colonies to the hunters. The memory burned in his heart. But here, with so many scientists and diplomats on board, he could not simply order a fight that would kill them all. Transmit a request for negotiation," Varken said finally. His officer hesitated. "Captain, the hunters do not negotiate." "Then perhaps they will make an exception," Varken replied quietly, though he knew it was a hollow hope. The convoy slowed. Engines dimmed. Shields flickered weakly against the pressure of hunter targeting systems. In that moment, despair filled every alien heart. On board the Lyrian research vessel Aerolith, a young scholar named Talaran sat frozen at his console. His kind were tall and thin, with glowing eyes suited for study. He had dreamed of sharing Lyrian knowledge with new civilizations. Now he was about to die in the cold void, and all his knowledge would vanish with him. He looked at the stars outside the viewport. They had always seemed so wide, so free. Now they felt like a cage. The hunters began to close in. Their ships moved like a wall of steel, tightening the noose around the convoy. Energy cannons powered up, casting faint red glows across the black sky. A low hum spread across the channels. The hunters spoke again. "You have 1 minute to surrender." Panic spread. On ship after ship, voices rose in fear. Some begged their captains to fight, others demanded escape, but escape was impossible. Engines were locked by the hunters' disruption fields. Their enemies had planned everything perfectly. Varken's claws tapped the armrest of his command chair. He could already see it. The convoy would break apart in chaos. The hunters would pick them off one by one. His people, his allies, all gone. The countdown ticked in his mind. 50 seconds. 40. 30. He was about to give the final order, to surrender, to hope for some small mercy, when something unexpected happened. The sensor operator gasped. "Captain!" A new signal. Varken turned sharply. "Where?" "Sector 9. Just outside the hunter formation. A ship is entering real space from warp." The crew stared at the screen as a small vessel appeared. Compared to the enormous hunter warships, it was tiny, hardly more than a speck. Its hull was not sleek or beautiful. It looked old, patched together, and strangely designed. The alien crew squinted at its markings, trying to identify the species. Then came the transmission. A clear voice, steady and calm. "This is Captain Elias Carter of Earth Starship Resolute. Identify yourselves, hunters. You are in violation of neutral space." The aliens froze. "Earth? Humans?" The Lyrian scholar Talaran whispered. "Impossible. Humans? Here?" Warken had heard of them, a young species barely known in the galaxy. They had only begun to explore beyond their home system. Other civilizations spoke of them as reckless, emotional, untested. No one considered them powerful, and yet, here was one standing between them and certain death. The hunters' flagship responded, their voice filled with scorn. "A lone vessel dares to challenge the hunters? Foolish human. Leave now or be destroyed." Carter's voice did not waver. "I don't think so. You will disengage from the convoy, or you will deal with me." The alien crews exchanged looks of disbelief. Did this human not see the size of the hunter fleet? One small ship against dozens of warships? It was madness. Relira, the Kalari captain, shook her head. "He is insane. He will only die with us." Yet there was something in Carter's voice, something calm, something unshaken, that made even Varkan pause. The hunters laughed, their ships moving into attack formation. Weapons locked onto the lone human craft. The convoy held its breath, expecting the small vessel to be erased in an instant. But then the Resolute moved. It darted forward with surprising speed, weaving through the first wave of hunter fire. Energy blast lit the void, missing by a hair's width. The human ship rolled, spun, and released countermeasures. Explosions rippled across empty space, but the ship was untouched. On every alien bridge, jaws dropped. This was no clumsy civilian ship. This was a hunter of a different kind. "Impossible," whispered Talaran. He dodged all of it. Varkan leaned closer to the screen. His heart, heavy with despair only moments before, now beat with a strange new rhythm. Hope, could it be? The hunters snarled, humiliated by the dodge. Their fleet shifted, preparing to unleash more power. Yet the human ship moved again, unpredictable, clever, never where the hunters expected. It was as if the pilot could see their moves before they made them. The alien convoy, still trapped, could do nothing but watch. But already something had changed. For the first time since the ambush began, the hunters did not look invincible. For the first time, the aliens were not alone, and thus, in the darkest moment, a legend began. The hunters had come to devour an easy prize. Instead, they found themselves facing something new. Something bold. Something human. The aliens whispered to one another, barely daring to believe. The hunters had us surrounded. And then the human appeared. The void of space burned with bright flashes as hunter weapons discharged again and again. The convoy, trapped and helpless, could only watch as the small human ship dodged through the chaos. It was unbelievable. Each time the hunters fired, the Resolute twisted away at the last second. The alien crews had seen experienced pilots before, but never something like this. It was as though Captain Elias Carter had mapped every angle of the battle before it began. On the Kalari vessel, Relira stared at the display with her wide, liquid eyes. "It makes no sense," she whispered. "No one can move like that. Not against hunters." Her first officer croaked back, his voice trembling. "Yet he does." Again and again, the ship rolled gracefully through a curtain of fire, narrowly avoiding destruction. The humans had built their vessels differently, smaller, lighter, and faster than most alien designs. But even that could not explain what the convoy was witnessing. It was not only the ship, it was the pilot. On the bridge of the Lyrian research vessel Aerolith, young scholar Talaran leaned closer to his screen. His glowing eyes tracked every movement. "The way he maneuvers," he murmured. "He does not follow a set pattern. Every turn is unexpected. He is reading their tactics and breaking them apart." One of his fellow scholars shook his head. "That should be impossible. The hunters fly with machines that predict movements before they happen. Yet the human defies those machines," Talaran said. His voice carried wonder now, not fear. "He thinks faster than them." Inside the Resolute, Captain Elias Carter sat calmly at his console. His hands moved across the controls with practiced precision. The ship groaned as it twisted through maneuvers it had not been designed to endure, but Carter pushed it anyway. He had seen hunters before. Not often. Humans were still new to galactic space, but enough to know what they were. Predators. Bullies. They had hunted young civilizations for centuries, feeding on their weakness. Carter hated bullies. Status? He asked his onboard AI. The cool voice replied, "Shields at 60%. Hull integrity stable. Weapons fully charged." Carter nodded, eyes fixed on the swarm of enemy ships around him. "Good. Let's give them something to think about." He fired. Twin beams of energy cut through the dark, striking a hunter frigate across its side. The larger ship shuddered, its shields flaring under the impact. The hunters had expected their prey to run, not to fight back. The convoy gasped as the humans' attack forced the massive warship to retreat for repairs. Varkan, captain of the alien flagship Talaran, gripped the arms of his chair tightly. His insectoid eyes tracked the fight, disbelief written across his face. "He damaged a hunter frigate," Varkan said aloud. His crew exchanged shocked looks. The hunters were supposed to be unstoppable. Even one of their smaller ships could crush a convoy like this without effort. And yet, here was a lone human in a vessel half their size striking them and surviving. One of Varkan's officers whispered, "Captain, if he can do this, perhaps." Varkan silenced him with a raised claw. He dared not hope yet. But in the dark corners of his heart, a spark began to grow. The hunters, enraged by the damage, shifted their tactics. 6 of their warships broke formation and focused entirely on the human. Weapons lit up and the space around the Resolute burned with energy fire. But Carter did not flinch. He cut his engines, letting his ship drift, then reignited them at full thrust in the opposite direction. The maneuver caused 3 of the hunters' shots to crash into each other. A blinding explosion lit the void and debris spun across the battlefield. The aliens gasped again. "Did he just make them shoot themselves?" Rhalyra said, her voice filled with disbelief. Talaran answered quietly, "Yes. He uses their strength against them. Where we see walls, he sees doors." Carter's voice came across the open channel, strong and steady. "Convoy, this is Captain Carter of the Resolute. Hold your positions. Keep your shields up. Stay calm. I'll buy you the time you need." His words carried a strange power. They were not loud or commanding, but they were certain. In that moment, the aliens, frightened, hopeless, and ready to surrender, felt something they had not felt since the ambush began. Hope. The hunter commander snarled, his voice echoing through the comms. "You dare defy us, human? You will be torn apart. We will scatter your bones through the stars." Carter smirked slightly. "You can try." He pushed his ship forward again. This time he weaved between 2 hunter destroyers, releasing small drones that latched onto their hulls. The drones emitted powerful bursts of static, scrambling the hunter's sensors. "Blind them," Carter muttered. "Let's even the field." The hunters fired wildly now, unable to track him properly. Shots missed not only the human but nearly struck each other. For the first time in the battle, the predators looked clumsy. In the convoy, whispers spread. A single human holds them back. He fights as if he has no fear. He makes the impossible possible. On board the Aerolith, Talaran typed quickly, recording every detail. His scholar's mind could not let this moment pass. He had to preserve it to study it later. "This changes everything," he whispered. Still, the hunters were not weak. Their fleet adjusted quickly. A massive battleship pushed forward, dwarfing the Resolute. Its cannons glowed with deadly power. The alien convoy trembled. That weapon could tear through an entire city in one shot. Against the tiny human ship, it would be instant death. Carter saw it too. His eyes narrowed. He whispered quietly to himself, "All right, let's dance." He accelerated straight toward the battleship. The aliens gasped. "No, he cannot," Rhalyra cried out, clutching the side of her chair. "He flies toward death." But Carter's move was not madness. At the last moment, he cut power to his ship, making it drift. The hunter's targeting systems, locked on his last speed, fired too far ahead. The energy blast missed him and struck one of their own cruisers instead. The explosion tore the cruiser apart. Pieces of burning metal scattered through space. The convoy erupted in stunned silence. The impossible had happened again. The human had tricked the mighty hunters into destroying themselves. On the Talaran, Varkan spoke softly, almost reverently. "He fights with more than weapons. He fights with his mind," one of his officers nodded. "He sees patterns no one else sees. That is why he survives." Varkan's eyes glimmered. "Perhaps that is why his people will not remain unknown for long." The hunters grew desperate. More ships closed in, But their formation was no longer perfect. Fear had begun to creep into their lines. Fear of the unpredictable human who turned every strength into weakness. Carter knew he could not destroy them all. But he did not need to. His goal was simple: buy the convoy time. He opened his comm again. "Convoy, prepare your warp drives. The hunter's formation is weakening. When I give the signal breakthrough, you'll have one chance." Varkin's claws tapped nervously. "Human, we cannot outrun them." "You can," Carter replied firmly, "because I'll be keeping them busy." There was no hesitation in his voice. No fear, only certainty. On the Aerolith, Talaran felt his chest tighten. The human was risking everything: his ship, his life, for strangers he had never met. Why? Because that was who humans were, he realized. Bold, reckless, but also brave. The Lyrian scholar whispered the words that would later echo across the galaxy. When we were surrounded by death, it was the human who stood between us and the end. The battle raged on. The Resolute darted, rolled, and struck, each movement forcing the hunters to stumble. The aliens held their breath, watching as one small ship turned an impossible defeat into a struggle. For the first time, the hunters were not certain of victory, and for the first time the convoy believed they might live. The battle in the stars burned brighter than any sun. Hunter cannons fired in endless streams, their crimson blast cutting across the dark. The convoy of alien vessels huddled together, shields flickering under the storm. Yet they still lived, because one small ship danced between death and fire. The Resolute. Captain Elias Carter's vessel was half the size of a Hunter frigate, a fraction of their firepower. But in his hands, it was more dangerous than any battleship. He turned weakness into strength and traps into weapons. On the alien flagship Talaran, Captain Varkin watched with his insectoid eyes wide. Each second felt impossible. The human darted through the Hunter fleet not as prey, but as a predator. "He moves as if the void is his home," Varkin whispered. One of his officers answered, "Or as if death does not frighten him." Varkin's claws clicked softly on the chair. No, it was not that death did not frighten the human. It was that he fought as though life itself was worth gambling to protect strangers. The hunters, furious with their repeated failures, began to adapt. Their fleet spread wider, surrounding Carter on all sides. Hundreds of targeting beams locked on him. The alien convoy trembled. Even the human could not escape this. Carter studied the display calmly. His ship's AI spoke in its steady tone. "Enemy fleet adjusting tactics. Estimated survival chance 2%. 2% is still a chance," Carter muttered. "We'll take it." His fingers raced across the controls. He pushed the Resolute into a dive straight toward the thickest cluster of hunters. Energy blasts screamed past, striking his shields, shaking the ship. In the convoy, Relyra of the Kalari covered her face. "He runs into their jaws. He will be destroyed." But Talaran, the Lyrian scholar, shook his head. His glowing eyes tracked the movements. "No, he is not running to death. He is running to something else." Carter's ship weaved between two hunters, passing dangerously close. As he slid through the gap, he released pods of metallic spheres. The spheres unfolded, releasing clouds of reflective fragments. The hunter sensors lit with false readings. Their targeting systems spun wildly, unable to lock on. In their confusion, two hunters fired at each other. The explosion lit the battlefield, scattering debris. The aliens gasped as the impossible happened yet again. "He blinds them," Varkin murmured. "He fights not with force but with trickery." Talaran smiled faintly. "He rewrites the rules." The hunters roared with rage. More ships pressed forward, overwhelming with sheer numbers. But Carter was already moving. He pushed the Resolute toward a small asteroid cluster at the edge of the field. The convoy watched in confusion. Why would he hide among rocks when the hunters could blast them apart? But Carter had a plan. He fired at the asteroids, shattering them into fragments. His ship dove through the cloud of spinning rock, using the debris as cover. The hunters followed, but their massive ships could not maneuver as quickly. They scraped against the rocks, shields sparking under the impacts. Then Carter turned sharply, releasing mines into the debris field. When the hunters chased him through, the mines detonated, tearing through their hulls. Two more hunter vessels were crippled. The convoy erupted in cheers. They could not believe it. A lone human ship was holding off a fleet. On the bridge of the Aerolith, Talaran typed furiously, recording every move. Asteroid debris as cover. Mines disguised as fragments. Brilliant. Every weakness he turns into strength. One of his companions asked softly, "But why? Why risk everything for us?" Talaran looked up, his eyes shining. "Because he believes we are worth saving." The hunters, however, would not stop. Their commander roared across the comms, his voice full of fury. "Human, enough games! You will fall before the might of the hunters." Carter's reply was calm. "Maybe, but not today." The massive hunter flagship moved forward, its cannons glowing with terrifying power. Carter knew he could not take it head-on. But he did not need to. He only needed to make them vulnerable. "AI," he said. "Prepare the overload charge." "Warning," the AI replied. "This will damage the ship's systems." "Better us than them," Carter said firmly. The convoy held its breath as Carter dove straight toward the flagship. The massive cannons powered up, charging for a final, devastating shot. At the last second, Carter released a pulse from his ship's reactor. The blast of raw energy fried nearby sensors, blinding the hunters. Their flagship's cannon misfired, the beam lancing harmlessly into the void. The convoy gasped. But Carter was not done. He swung around, firing every weapon at once, lasers, torpedoes, even railgun slugs. The barrage struck the flagship's engines. The great warship trembled, its shields flickering, smoke pouring from its rear. The invincible Predator had been wounded. The alien convoy exploded with hope. Voices rose in joy, relief, disbelief. Varkin spoke into the comms. "Human, you have weakened their leader." "Tell us what to do!" Carter's voice came steady but firm. "Convoy, listen carefully. Prepare your warp drives. Their formation is broken. When I signal, you will break through in a single direction. Do not scatter. Do not hesitate. Move together." The aliens exchanged uncertain looks. Their warp systems were still under interference from the hunters. Could they even escape? Relira's first officer said nervously, "If we fail, we will be torn apart." Relira clenched her hands. She looked at the human ship still darting between giants. "If he risks everything for us, then we must try." Carter kept fighting, buying them time. His ship shook with each blast, his shields dropping lower. The AI warned him again and again, warning. Shields at 30%. Warning. Structural integrity falling, but Carter pressed on. He fired, dodged, tricked, and baited, never letting the hunters regain control. On board the Aerolith, Talaran whispered, "He cannot keep this up forever." Varkin, listening on his own ship, replied over the shared channel, "Then we must not waste his sacrifice. When the human gives the signal, we move." At last, Carter's voice rang out again. "Convoy now. Break through to Sector 12. Follow my beacon. Go." Engines roared to life across the convoy. Shields flared as the alien ships pushed forward together, forming a single spearhead. The hunters turned to block them, but Carter was already in motion. The Resolute darted across the battlefield, drawing fire, slamming torpedoes into exposed engines, cutting open gaps in the wall. The aliens followed his beacon, their ships breaking through the weak point he created. One by one, the convoy ships burst through the hunter lines. Cheers erupted on every bridge. They were escaping. The hunter commander bellowed in fury. "Do not let them leave. Destroy the human!" But Carter stayed between the convoy and their pursuers, weaving, blocking, striking. He fought like a wall of iron, unbreakable. His small ship became the shield for dozens of others. Finally, the first alien ship slipped into warp. Then another, and another. Varkin's claws trembled as he ordered his crew. "Engage warp drive. Follow the beacon." The Talaran vanished into the safety of faster-than-light travel. One by one, the convoy disappeared into the stars, free, but not all had escaped yet. The Resolute. Carter's ship shook violently, smoke filling the bridge. The AI reported damage across every system. Shields were gone, weapons offline, engines burning. The convoy was safe, but Carter was surrounded. On the Aerolith, Talaran's glowing eyes widened in horror. "He stays behind." Relira cried out, "No, he cannot escape." Varkin's voice broke through the comms. "Human, come with us." "Engage warp!" Carter's calm voice replied. "Can't do that. Engines are gone. But you're safe. That's what matters." "No," Varkin roared. "We cannot leave you." "You can, and you will." Carter's voice was steady. "Tell your people the hunters can bleed. Remember that. The convoy was gone. Only the Resolute remained, standing alone against the fury of the hunters. Carter leaned back in his chair, blood running down his face, a faint smile on his lips. His ship was broken, but his mission was complete. For the first time in history, a hunter fleet had failed, and across the galaxy, the legend of humanity began to spread. The stars were quiet again for the alien convoy. One by one, their ships slipped into the safety of warp. Yet no one felt peace in their hearts, for while they escaped, one ship had stayed behind, the Resolute. Captain Elias Carter. The human's voice echoed in their memories. Tell your people the hunters can bleed. Remember that. On the flagship Talaran, Varkin sat motionless in his command chair. His insectoid claws dug into the armrests. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to fight alongside the human. But his crew reminded him of the truth. Their ships had no chance against a hunter fleet. If they returned, they would only die, and Carter's sacrifice would mean nothing. Still, Varkin's eyes burned with shame. He stayed for us, Varkin said softly. One life for hundreds, and we left him. His officer bowed his head. Captain, it was his choice. He gave us hope where there was none. Hope. The word felt heavy, like a treasure and a burden at the same time. On the Kalari vessel, Relira sat silently, staring at the empty space on the screen where the human ship had last been. Her people were gentle, raised in oceans, not wars. She had never understood courage in such raw form. He smiled when he spoke, she whispered. Even when he faced death, he smiled. Her crew did not answer. They had no words. On the aerolith, the Lyrian scholar Talaran typed furiously. His glowing eyes were bright with purpose. Every detail, he murmured to himself. Every movement, every word. I must record it all. One of his fellow scholars looked at him in confusion. Why? He is only one human. The hunters will destroy him. Talaran's fingers paused for a moment. Then he looked up, his eyes steady. Because when stories spread, they become more than truth. They become strength. One human may die, but the idea of what he did will live, and that will change everything. Meanwhile, back in the trap, the Resolute was burning. Carter's ship shook with each impact. The hull groaned, shields long gone, systems failing. Sparks flew across the bridge, smoke filling the air. Yet Carter sat firmly in his chair, his hands steady on the controls. The hunters circled him like wolves around a wounded animal. Their commander's voice came across the comms, thick with anger. Human, you are finished. No more tricks, no more games. You will be torn apart. Carter smirked faintly. Funny. You said that an hour ago. The hunter commander growled. You think this defiance means anything? You are one against many. One against many, Carter repeated softly. He shook his head. That's the thing about humans. We don't count the odds. We just fight. He launched his last torpedoes. The missiles screamed through the void, striking a hunter-destroyer already damaged from earlier. The explosion split the vessel in half. The hunters roared in fury. Their beams tore into the Resolute, ripping armor apart. The small ship spun, alarms blaring. The AI spoke, calm even as the ship crumbled. Warning. Reactor instability. Critical systems failing. Carter coughed, smoke filling his lungs. His hands shook now, but his eyes never lost focus. Good, he whispered. Let's make it count. Far away, the convoy ships received the last sensor readings from the battle. They saw flashes of light as the human kept fighting even when his ship was nearly gone. Relira covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. He still fights. Even now, Varkin closed his claws tightly. He fights not for himself, but for us. And Talaran, watching the data feed, whispered, This is not just a battle. This is a lesson. He shows us what we could be if we stop fearing and start believing. Inside the Hunter flagship, the commander seethed. His prey had escaped. His fleet had suffered humiliation, and still the human refused to die quietly. Crush him, the commander roared. I want nothing left but ashes. The hunters closed in. But Carter laughed. Quiet, ragged, but real. You don't get it, do you? He said, his voice carried across the comms. You think strength is ships, weapons, numbers. But real strength is choosing to stand when no one else will. The hunters did not understand. They never had. They only knew conquest. But the aliens who listened, the convoy who owed their lives to him, they understood. Every word carved itself into their hearts. The Resolute was breaking apart now. Panels collapsed, fire spreading. Carter's AI warned of imminent destruction. Reactor overload in 90 seconds, the voice said. Carter leaned back, closing his eyes for a brief moment. He thought of Earth, of the blue oceans, green forests, and the sky that stretched wider than any starfield. He thought of the people, imperfect, reckless, but stubborn and full of spirit. Not a bad place for a last stand, he muttered. He opened his eyes again, sharp and clear. AI, redirect all remaining power to the reactor core. Warning. That will result in catastrophic detonation. That's the idea, Carter said. Back with the convoy, the alien captains argued. We must turn back. Rhaenyra cried. He will die alone. We cannot, Varkin said firmly. If we return, we throw away the life he gave us. Talaran raised his voice, surprising them both. Listen, do you not understand? He knew this would happen. He chose it. Not for glory. Not for himself, for us. For every one of us. His sacrifice is not only to save our lives, it is to show us what humans are. We must not waste that. His words silenced them. Slowly they realized he was right. Back in the trap, the hunters prepared for the kill. Their ships closed in, weapons glowing. But Carter smiled. Closer, he muttered. Come on, just a little closer. The AI gave the countdown. 30 seconds to reactor overload. The hunters, sensing victory, surrounded him fully. They wanted to watch him burn. But Carter whispered, You made one mistake. You thought I was alone. But I'm not. Every ship I saved, every life I protected, they'll remember. And that means I've already won. The AI spoke one last time. Reactor overload in 5, 4, 3. Then the void erupted in light. A blinding explosion tore across the Hunter formation. The Resolute's reactor detonated with the force of a dying star, engulfing the nearest warships. Shields cracked, hulls shattered, ships broke apart. The convoy, already far in warp, felt the shockwave ripple through their sensors. They saw Hunter signatures vanish one by one. Silence followed. Rhaenyra wept openly. He gave everything. Varkin lowered his head. One ship against many, and he did what none of us dared. Talaran placed his hand on the console. His voice was steady, though his heart ached. Write it into our records. Let every species know. The hunters were surrounded by their prey, and then a human appeared. Alone he stood. Alone he fought. Alone he showed us what it means to be truly strong. Across the convoy, silence gave way to whispers. Whispers became voices. Voices became a vow they would not forget. The hunters had been feared for centuries, their power unchallenged. But now, across dozens of ships filled with survivors, a new story spread. A story of courage, of sacrifice, of a lone human who had changed everything. And though Captain Elias Carter's ship was gone, his spirit was not. It lived in the hearts of every alien who had seen him fight. The human spirit. The galaxy was vast, filled with billions of stars and countless civilizations. Yet in that endless sea of life, stories moved faster than light. Stories shaped empires, inspired revolutions, and broke chains stronger than steel. And the newest story, the one whispered across stations, colonies and war fleets, was simple but powerful. The hunters surrounded their prey, and then a human appeared. The spreading story on the Lyrian homeworld, scholars gathered in grand halls, their crystal spires glowing under the sun. Talaran stood among them, his records of the battle displayed on shimmering screens. Every detail was there, the words, the struggle, the last stand. The other scholars listened in silence. When the recording ended, one finally spoke. Impossible. A single ship against a hunter fleet? No mind, no species, no machine can defy such odds. Talaran's voice was firm, and yet he did. You may deny it. You may argue. But I was there, I saw it. And I tell you this, truth or legend, it does not matter. Because now thousands believe it. And belief is more dangerous than any weapon. The Lyrians, once a species of record keepers, began to change. For the first time, they did not only write of events, they spoke of courage, of defiance, and everywhere their words spread like fire. On the Kalari ocean world, Rhaenyra stood before her people in the great water domes. Her gentle voice trembled as she told them of Carter's final moments. He smiled, she said, her large eyes shimmering. Even when he faced death, he smiled. He gave his life for us, though he had no reason to. He was not Kalari. We were strangers to him, and yet he stood for us. Her people, who had always hidden from war, felt something stir inside them. For the first time in living memory, they did not think of running when they imagined the hunters. They thought of standing. On the insectoid world of the Threxian, Captain Varkin delivered his report to the War Council. He had always believed only in strength and numbers, but now his voice shook as he spoke. The human faced them alone. He did not surrender. He did not flee. He made the hunters bleed. He made them afraid. One of the council elders hissed in disbelief. Afraid? The hunters have ruled unchallenged for centuries. They do not fear. Varkin's eyes narrowed. Then you have not seen what I saw. I saw their fleet burn. I heard their commander rage. And I tell you, if one human can do this, what will happen when many come? For the first time in ages, the Threxian council was silent. They had lived under the hunter's shadow too long. Now the shadow trembled. The hunters' unease in their dark citadels, the hunters gathered. Their commanders spoke in deep voices, their pride wounded. A single prey ship should not have cost us so much, one growled. We lost 5 destroyers. Damaged more. And worst of all, the others escaped. Another slammed his clawed fist against the table. It was one human, one. And yet his story now spreads across the stars. Do you not hear it? Do you not see how the lesser races whisper his name? The leader of the council hissed. Stories are wind. We crush them as we crush their fleets. But even as he said it, doubt filled the chamber. Because the truth was simple. For the first time, prey had fought back. And worse, for the first time, the hunters had been made to bleed. Seeds of resistance. Months passed. Then years. And everywhere the hunters went, they found something new waiting. Convoys no longer scattered in fear. Sometimes they formed tight circles, their captains whispering, "Remember the human." Planets that once surrendered without a fight now rose up in defiance. When the hunters demanded submission, the people answered, "One against many. We fight." Rebel cells painted the symbol of a lone starship across walls. They called themselves the Resolute. And whenever the hunters tried to crush these uprisings, the people fought harder, holding longer than ever before. It was not because they thought they could win. It was because they remembered that one man had stood when no one else would. Humanity arrives. And then, one day the rest of humanity came. For years, humans had stayed on the edges of the galactic map. Curious explorers, traders, builders. Other species had dismissed them as reckless but harmless. But when human fleets finally entered hunter-controlled space, the galaxy remembered the story. They remembered the one called Carter, and now there were not one but hundreds of ships, thousands of humans carrying the same stubborn spirit. The hunters, so proud, so confident, found themselves unsettled, for they realized something terrible. If one human alone had done so much, what would many do together? The convoys Vau Varkin, Relira, and Talarin met again years later, under the protection of a growing alliance of species. They stood on a neutral station, watching a human fleet arrive through warp. Varkin's claws tightened as he spoke. I still see it. His ship burning but unbroken. Relira nodded, her voice soft.
His smile has never left me.
It reminds me that even in the darkest moment, light can shine. Talarin looked at the humans with deep eyes. He was only one, yet he changed us all. His story is now our weapon, sharper than any blade. They stood together in silence, watching the humans dock. Soldiers stepped out, engineers followed, and leaders came with them. Ordinary people, yet carrying the same energy Carter had shown, and the 3 survivors knew they would keep the vow. Carter's sacrifice would not be forgotten. Carter's legacy on Earth, his name was spoken with pride. Though his body was lost among the stars, his deeds returned home in stories carried by survivors. Children in schools learned of the captain who stood alone. Artists painted his last battle in colors of fire and light. Leaders spoke his words when urging people to stand firm. Strength is not numbers. Strength is standing when no one else will. That phrase became more than memory. It became the heart of a movement. The final whisper years later, on a distant battlefield, a hunter commander faced defeat at the hands of a human-led alliance. His forces crumbled, his ships burned, and as he stared at the humans advancing, he whispered in fear. The stories were true, for in his heart he remembered the first one, the lone human who had stood against them, the lone human who had laughed in their face, the lone human who had turned fear into courage. And so even in death, Captain Elias Carter lived on, not in body, not in ship, but in every whisper of rebellion, in every stand against tyranny, in every voice that said, "We will not yield." And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. Closing lines. The hunters once believed themselves eternal, unstoppable, unchallenged. But the galaxy had changed, because when the hunters surrounded their prey, a single human appeared, and that was enough to light a fire the universe would never forget.